This is TWiT.
One of the things extracted from the quarterly report is a big jump in R&D spending for Apple, probably the largest R&D spend in many, 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 many years. Lory, did Tim Cook address that at all when he talked about forward-looking stuff?
You know, I think it was actually a question that was addressed to Luca, and I think he was the only one that addressed it. And
what did Luca say?
It was about the Intel thing. I think he was kind of mentioning that.
So that's one reason for the increase is $1 billion to Intel. That goes under R&D.
Right. And that they're constantly looking to invest in in their future. I think if I remember, there's like this. Do they call it the Cook doctrine, which is we want to be in control of all of the technology that goes into what we do. So they're kind of, just spreading it out, doing a lot of research and development to make sure that they've got... It cracks
me up they call that the Cook doctrine because honestly, isn't that what Steve always said too, is vertical integration. You make the best software if you make the best hardware, and you make vice versa.
Right. We wouldn't have Macs and iPhones and iPads if it weren't for that doctrine that came long before Tim Cook.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's always been there.
One of the things that...
The only time they moved away from it is when they started licensing the OS, and that was a huge mistake. And that was before Steve. I mean,
that's
Steve
funny because you've been asking for that for years. You want Apple to give away Mac OS.
I want them to give away when they're ready, when they're done with it.
Right.
That's a drop. Take a version of it and push it into the and
so
give it away.
So what you're saying is we should have open source OS 9, Mac OS 9. System 7, open source it.
OS.
And at least just let people run with it so that they can, but it depends on when the merge actually, we're slowly moving toward, you can just see these two OSs. I don't think they're necessarily going to become one or the other, but you're seeing kind of this, the iPad experience. The iPad experience is more like the Mac experience. The Mac experience is more like the iPad experience.
It feels like the other shoe to drop will be ARM. And and then once, we've talked a lot about this, and I don't know how you guys feel. I think mostly the sense I'm getting from a lot of people, including Jean-Louis Gasset in his Monday note, which he wrote last week, is that there will be Intel high-end. The Mac Pro is going to have to stay on Xeon. It's going to have to stay on Intel. But that everything else can go ARM. Everything you'll have a MacBook Air on ARM.
What I'm curious about is now that we saw this, I mean, the most incredible piece of desktop hardware that I've ever seen released. I mean,
I'm still cleaning up the drool.
I know. It's like I have to clean it up every time I look at the page, and
I would love one of those so bad, but they just can't.
Anyway, so
can borrow Lisa's.
What that keeps having me think about is I want that version of a MacBook Pro. I want them to build the tank version of the MacBook Pro, and then that stays on Intel, but it's got 2 Intel processors, and it's got it heats up your you have to have a special pad so it doesn't light up your desk when you have it sitting on it.
You can cook soup on it.
But the idea is like to have this gorgeous, massive, super powerful MacBook Pro is something that I would love to see, and then ARM for everything else, and because most people are not using it that way. And the reality is the new MacBook Pros are not MacBook Pros; they're MacBook Air-ish kind of things, So I'm also just using my iPad.
R&D spending. Go ahead, Rene, and then I'll talk about R&D.
One of the things to remember is that when Apple made the iPhone, just in terms of Apple R&D, that was largely resources they already had at their disposal. They just were more efficient with them. They moved people over to make the iPhone. There were some things like antennas and modems that they had to work on, but that was largely just all Mac, the same ID department, same human interface department, same Objective-C department, all working on the iPhone. So the R&D was ridiculously low. But as they move into augmented reality and into autonomous technologies, those are all brand new. There's no company. They're buying a bunch of small companies, but it's not like just buying Next and doing something for years and then just popping them over to something else. So the massive increase in spend we see is because they're working incredibly hard on miniaturization, and they're working incredibly hard on breaking brand new technologies, which is always much more expensive.
According to a CNBC, Apple is spending the largest proportion of its revenue on R&D since 2003, $4.2 billion this quarter, which means it's on a pace to spend $16 billion for 2019 on research and development.
Includes micro LED, that includes modems, that includes all the autonomous technology, all the AR technology, all the things that are going into
I agree 100% with what Rene's been saying. That I can't think of a time when Apple has been been working so heavily in stuff that absolutely does not exist yet, where they can't buy capacity, manufacturing capacity for this. They can't buy this technology from somebody else. They can't adapt something that someone else has before they figure out how to do it themselves. Just as Rene said, if you're working on augmented reality, we don't have wearables yet that can really do augmented reality. They're going to have to design it. If they really are serious about autonomous vehicles, we don't really have that yet, so they have to build that. And even the components like micro LED, that is really going to be a big part of the next part of miniaturizing wearables. If we want to get an Apple Watch that's substantially thinner than what we have right now, or can finally last 2 or 3 days between a charge, we're going to need brand new display technology, which doesn't exist yet. And so if Apple really wants to continue to be ahead, I can't remember a time in Apple history where so much of what their plans are involves stuff that they're going to have to cook up themselves.